Hello, everyone. This is the Devil's Triangle, Benedict Canyon, Part 2. We were talking about Susan Jane Berman, a Jewish girl, Jewish woman, age 55, who was on her knees begging for her life, shot through the head, execution style at 1527 Benedict Canyon Drive, just about 4 houses south from where Superman, George Reeves, was shot in the head in 1959, on June 16th, 1959. Susan Jane Berman was murdered on December 23rd, 2000. So approximately 40 years later. All right, and they did end up charging someone with that murder 23 years later. Personally, I don't believe it, but who cares, right? The point is that they generally never get the right murderer. I'm of the opinion that most of the murders having to do with Benedict Canyon are professional, and the killers are never caught, and their names are never disclosed, and they are never arrested, arraigned, or convicted. There are some scapegoats that get rounded up from time to time. All right, and of all the people that are in this story having to do with Superman, George Reeves, or Susan Jane Berman, Hollywood-connected Jewish girl, there's only one person who factors into all these stories, and his name is not William Randolph Hearst, and it's not Marion Davies. It is Doris Duke. She was alive during most of these murders. I mean, she was 12 years old when William Randolph Hearst's friend, who was having an affair with his girlfriend, who he's having an affair from his wife with, Marion Davies, is having an affair with Thomas H. Ensay, who lives at 1051 Benedict Canyon Drive. And William Randolph Hearst hosts a birthday party in San Diego aboard his yacht under maritime law at sea, where somewhere along the line Thomas Davies gets shot in the head, it appears, according to Charlie Chaplin's ex-wife. She saw him carried off the yacht in a stretcher with his head bleeding. So it doesn't sound like it was champagne and salted almonds. Sounds like a gunshot to the head. Anyway, he's found dead in his Benedict Canyon house, just below the Sharon Tate murder scene, 1051 Benedict Canyon Drive. That was in 1924. Doris Duke was 12 years old when that happened. And then when Sharon Tate was done away with on August 9th, 1969, Doris Duke was living about 300 yards away at Falcon, Lair, 1436 Bella, right? And she lives another 13 years. Doris Duke lived to age 79, 80. Let's say she was age 80 when she died. It's kind of confusing because she had a series of medical problems. She broke her hip. She had a facelift that went bad. She stood 6 foot tall, which is unusual. You should also know that Doris Duke had her own homicide to deal with. She murdered her curator of all of her artwork, who she was having an affair with, and she drove over him in her limousine multiple times, stopped and started. That happened in Rhode Island, in front of her 49-room mansion there. He was breaking up with her, and she didn't take it very well. That was 1966. Sometime around October 6, 1966, Doris Duke murdered her lover. Anyway, she had to write a check for $75,000 to his family as an apology. They had to sue her for that, but she coughed up $75,000 back in 1967, 68, something. Around the time that Sharon Tate got murdered, Doris Duke was settling up with her lover's family. I think you're getting the picture if you watch my videos that if you're assigned housing to Benedict Canyon, if your name is Peter Falk or Jimmy Stewart or Jack Benny or Lucille Ball or Agnes Moorehead or Lionel Barrymore or Rod Stewart, if your name is Quincy Jones or Julio Iglesias or Zsa Zsa Gabor or Art Linkletter, if your name is Ira Gershwin or George Gershwin, you're in a prison camp, okay? You're in secured housing unit. You are in a secured housing unit. You're in a cul-de-sac, and you aren't getting out of there without permission. You're in a colony of cuckoo clocks, and you don't own your home. You're just assigned to that home until notified otherwise. And that includes the producer, director types like William Link, who had to move into Jose Menendez's murder home, which previously been occupied by Elton John and Michael Jackson. Would you want to live in a home where there had been a double homicide? I wouldn't. Would you want to be Jeffrey Franklin and build a mansion on Sharon Tate's gravesite? I wouldn't. That's perverted. Would you want to be named Oliver Stone and go visit Timothy Leary at 10106 Sunbrook Drive on St. Patrick's Day on a Sunday afternoon to celebrate a holiday that you don't believe in because you're Jewish and you're Buddhist? Because Oliver Silverstein Stone is Jewish and he's a Buddhist. And St. Patrick doesn't fit into that equation. Yet there's Oliver Stone right down the ice plant from where Abigail Folger was murdered on March 17th, 1996, celebrating St. Patty's Day with Timothy Leary, a career CIA agent who went to West Point Academy. And I'm here to tell you that's perverted. That is a perverted cult ritual. So that changes my entire image of Oliver Stone and all of his theatrically performed, dramatized, fake documentary movies, which have nothing to do with what really happened in any of his films. It's entertainment designed to social engineer you away from the actual truth of those films. The Vietnam War, the drug trade in Turkey, the assassination of John Kennedy, whose father built the murder scene, who built the home that Oliver Silverstein visited to see Timothy Leary. That home was built by John Kennedy's father through RKO Radio Pictures. All those homes that surround and include the murder scene were built by John Kennedy's father with his Jewish partners, because completely managed by Jews. Joe Kennedy didn't manage the Kennedys' participation in Hollywood. RCA and his Jewish partners did. That's also true with William Randolph Hearst. The Jews architected his home. A Jew owned his home, probably financed the home. Who knows if he really owned it? He had his Hearst Castle. So, again, if you Google the Susan Jane Bierman home, 1527 Benedict Canyon, and you Google the Superman George Reeves home, 1579 Benedict Canyon Drive, you will be astonished to see how close it is to the Falcon Lair Doris Duke home. And, there are 4 houses on Bella Drive. There are only 4 houses on the portion of Bella Drive to the east of Cielo Drive. Bella Drive continues, in my opinion, all the way to the Sharon Tate murder scene, but the media calls that Cielo Drive off Cielo Drive. So in order to keep things simple, just making a right-hand turn onto Bella Drive if you're going up Cielo Drive. If you're heading toward Davies Drive, using Cielo Drive to T, which tees into Davies Drive. Before you get to Davies Drive, you get to Bella Drive. They have a stop sign there now. At the time of the murders of Sharon Tate, there was no stop sign. But anyway, you turn right. It's a very sharp right. It's a very steep hill, and it winds around. Very quickly, you'll come to 1436 Bella Drive. Actually, you won't see the number. You'll see Falcon Lair Gate. And you'll be confused because there's a gate to the right, and then there's the gate that looks like it goes onto the property. And if you miss the turn, there's another gate that goes down a driveway down the steep hill that you just drove up on from Sella Drive. If you keep going, there's another house, 1440 Bella Drive, and then you go back to where it dead ends, which is not far. You will find yourself at 1435 Bella Drive. Okay, 1435 is a baseball throw away from Susan Berman's murder site. If you follow Davies Drive to where it dead ends, okay, you'll find yourself at 1450 Davies Drive. No, you'll be at 1420. 1420 Davies Drive. 1420 Davies Drive. You are less than 100 yards away from Superman's murder. 1420 Davies Drive. It's the last house on the cul-de-sac of Marion Davies. It's a spectacular Beverly Hillbilly style, Rupert Murdoch style mansion. I believe it's 1540 Bella Drive that will take you to a similar location on Bella Drive. 1450 Bella is very close proximity to 1420 Davies Drive. Even though they're on different streets, you have to realize they're on the same street. They are on the same street. It's separated by just some undeveloped land. I mean, it's the same coordinates. It's the same coordinates. You can walk from here. You can throw a baseball from one mansion to the other. They're really close. One's on Bella Drive and one is on Davies Drive, named after Marion Davies. Every single home in that vicinity is suspicious. Every single home. Not just the triangular Devil's Triangle homes of 1303 Shady Brook Drive, 10060 Cielo Drive, but not on Cielo Drive, it's on Bella Drive, or 10051 Cielo Drive, which is on Cielo Drive. Those three homes compute to 666, 3 sixes. They're all suspicious. They could all stage killers. You do know that I've already established that, as far as I'm concerned, the NATO Army bayonet teams who murdered the Sharon Tate people that were there that night, Friday night, Saturday morning, were staged from 10048 Cielo Drive, the Doppelganger twin directly below, as well as the home that Oliver Stone visited, 10106, the Timothy Leary home, 10106 Sunbrook Drive, 10101, 10101 Sunbrook Drive, 10100, 10100 Sunbrook Drive, 1212 Angelo Drive, which is not on Angelo Drive, it's on Sunbrook Drive. It shares the same driveway as 10101. So 10101 shares a swimming pool with 1212 Angelo Drive. 10101 Sunbrook Drive is adjacent to, on the same parcel of land, as a home with an address of 1212 Angelo Drive. So I don't even know that it's possible that you could have, I mean, they are different parcels, but they're on the same driveway, and they're both on Sunbrook Drive, but one is addressed 1212 Angelo Drive. You see how clever you'd have to be a UPS delivery person or an Amazon, because they have cul-de-sacs off cul-de-sacs. I mean, Angelo Drive in theory is not a cul-de-sac, but it's been manually turned into a cul-de-sac, just like Summit Ridge Drive has, because there's a series of gates, security gates, that you can't get past. So essentially, Angelo Drive dead ends every time you hit a gate. And we have this situation when cul-de-sacs end. However, if you're on foot and you're a soldier and you have nighttime vision, you can just hoof it because it's very close proximity to the next murder house. In other words, you can get on and off these properties without any witnesses seeing it, because you don't go through the front door. You come in the backyard. You come up the hillside, or you go down the hillside onto the property. In the case of Superman, you go downhill onto that property. Or in the case of Susan Berman, you go downhill onto her property, which didn't really belong to her. And Superman didn't own that home at 1579 Benedict Canyon either. It was technically in Tony Manick's name, which is his lover, who he's breaking up with, but he's set to marry a woman in 3 days by the name of Leonore Lemon. They're going to get married in Tijuana, Mexico, 3 days after George Reeves gets shot in the head. So he doesn't make his wedding. And allegedly, she's in the house whilst he gets shot in the head, allegedly downstairs with a guy named Fred Crane who lives on Easton Drive, you know, where Jay Sebring lived in Paul Levy Burns' house, Jane Harlow's house. Fred Crane lived in another house on that same cul-de-sac, which is walking distance to the Superman house. And Fred Crane was a personal friend of Superman. They both starred in 1939's Gone with the Wind. They were in the opening scene, the two redheaded twin boys. It was Fred Crane and George Reeves, whose real name is George Kiefer Brewer. They dyed their hair red to be in a very short scene at the beginning of Gone with the Wind, an epic with Vivian Leigh and Clark Gable, of course. All right, well, anyway, I wanted to tell you that this is a military killing zone, the Devil's Triangle, known as the Bermuda Triangle to some people, known as the Benedict Canyon Triangle to me. And I noticed that William Randolph Hearst preferred to not live in this place. He chose Franklin Canyon, Coldwater Canyon, and lived in a Jewish banker's home designed by a Jewish architect because it's safer. It's safer to live closer to Sunset Boulevard and not in these cul-de-sacs. Cul-de-sacs are dangerous. Now, I'm happy to report that there are many bankers who live in cul-de-sacs, in enclaves. And you know, what's good for the goose is good for the gander. That's what I say. And don't you find it fascinating that William Randolph Hearst, you know, first came to fame for Remember the Maine and To Hell with Spain in 1898 when we had the, you know, fake false flag attack of the Spanish against the United States Navy in the port of Havana, a port which the United States Navy completely controlled, and that we sunk the Maine and killed 266 sailors. And there's William Randolph Hearst to tell you what happened. And then later he's associated with the death of a person who's having an affair with his woman, Marion Davies. He's having an affair with him. And he ends up getting murdered by shot in the head, and he's found on Benedict Canyon. And then later we have William Randolph Hearst's great-granddaughter, Patricia Hearst, ends up getting kidnapped from University of California, Berkeley off College Avenue near People's Park. And she ends up living in a CIA clandestine neighborhood near the Pelosi family, near Nancy and Paul Pelosi and Diane Goldman Feinstein, near University of San Francisco Jesuit, St. Ignatius High School, near St. Agnes Parochial School, 300 yards from the Haight-Ashbury Free Medical Clinic, which is a banking facility. You see, William Randolph Hearst cannot get out of the story. Because you know what? The story is told by Jewish people. The Jewish people tell the story. And they play around with Ronald Reagan, and they play around with the Kennedy family, and they played around with William Randolph Hearst. Everybody thinks, you know, because the Hollywood produced that film with Orson Welles, Citizen Kane, which was about the all-omnipotent Wizard of Oz, William Randolph Hearst, when the reality of the puppet masters are the Jewish bankers that control William Randolph Hearst. William Randolph Hearst not running the show. The Jewish bankers are running the show. They're running Ronald Reagan. They're running Dean Martin. They're running Frank Sinatra. They're playing games with all these goys. All right, so anyway, that's what I wanted you to know is the triangulation of Benedict Canyon. So we've got the 666 triangle off Cielo Drive. And then you've got the situation with Superman and Susan Berman being in close proximity to Davies Drive at the dead end of the cul-de-sac at 1420 Davies Drive, and at the dead end of the cul-de-sac Bella Drive at 1450 Bella Drive, backing up into those murder sites. Then if we take the most recent murders in Benedict Canyon, which have not been corroborated, the 3 black women, 2 from Chicago and 1 from Phoenix, Arizona, which occurred at 2799 Ellison Drive. The only way the killers with automatic rifles could have escaped that long cul-de-sac Ellison Drive to escape would be to go 2 houses back up the hill, so slight uphill out of that dead end cul-de-sac. 2799 is at the dead end of a cul-de-sac Ellison Drive. So you retrace your footsteps, go back 2 houses, turn left, which is east, onto Arby Drive, go on down to the end of Arby. I'll tell you, go to 9600, 9601, and just go directly onto the undeveloped, there's a lot that there's no house. Just go there. There's a fence. You'll hit a fence of a person who lives on Summit Ridge Drive. Parallel the fence, follow the fence. You'll pop out on Summit Ridge Drive at 2601 or 2591. You'll be in between 2591 and 2601 Summit Ridge Drive. Then you'd have a car waiting for you. You have 4 gates that you have to get through to get to Mulholland Drive. There are 4 gates. But I'm telling you, whoever the killers were, if there were killers, they would have had the cipher codes to all those gates. And they would have had a limo driver there. And then, of course, Jack Nicholson's home is, as soon as you get through the last gate, you're at Jack Nicholson's house. Or if you go left, you're at the Warren Beatty house, which is a little further to the left / east. What's his name? Jack Nicholson is to the east, 200 yards, something like that. Real close. Anyway, that's how you can take a drive and turn it into a cul-de-sac, is through security gates. You have that with Angelo Drive, which would normally come off. It would normally come off Benedict Canyon Drive, and then it would serpentine around, and then eventually come through the Enchanted Meadow, Enchanted Hillside, and then it would drop back to Benedict Canyon Drive by Ann Margaret and Eddie Murphy's house, where near where Humphrey Bogart used to live, with Lauren Bacall, who's a Jewish girl from, I believe, Brooklyn or the Bronx. Anyway, because of the security gates, Angela Drive is a cul-de-sac. And Summit Ridge Drive would normally be a same situation, but on the east side of Benedict Canyon. But because they've got more than 4 security gates on it, it's a cul-de-sac. So in other words, if you're a killer trying to escape the crime scene, you can either stay in one of the perimeter homes until the police go away, if anyone even calls the police. Because if you dispose of the bodies yourself, then there won't be even a police report to be filed, which I believe most murders do not include the municipal police department. But if you wanted to get out, you just have to have the clearance codes for the gates. And there's not a damn thing that the Sheriff's Department or the Beverly Hills Police or the Los Angeles Robbery Homicide can do about it, because they don't have the authority and they don't have the mustard, and the district attorney is never going to prosecute a NATO Gladio murder. Never. They never have, and they never will. And technically we have 12 murders in Benedict Canyon over the last 100 years that we know about. But I'll bet there's 100 murders that we don't know about. I'm not even counting all the murders on the flats in Beverly Hills, like Jose Menendez or Ben Bugsy Siegel. I'm not counting him. I'm not counting the Greystone estate, which is over by the William Randolph Hearst Milton Getz estate. I'm not had a double homicide at the Greystone Mansion in Franklin Canyon. I'm not counting that. I'm not counting Laurel Canyon with all the murders that have gone on in Laurel Canyon. You know, after the Sharon Tate murders, they moved the murders down to West Hollywood with Art Linklater's daughter, then Connie Monty. Then they moved on with Inger Stevens up atop on Woodrow Wilson Drive atop Laurel Canyon. Then we went back down and got Janis Joplin at the Magic Castle at the Landmark Motel adjacent to the Magic Castle. Then we did Sal Mineo and Jack Cassidy in 1976. And then we did Lenny Bruce, and we did River Bottom, aka Phoenix, River Phoenix, whose real name is Bottom, the eldest of 5 Jewish children. And then, Ashley Ellerin and Lindsay Perlman, and who probably you don't even know their names. There are so many murders. Noreen Kidd Shatner, Dominique Dunn, Rebecca Schaefer. I can go on and on and on. I'm not even counting Leno and Rosemary LaBianca, or the pharmacist that lived about a half a mile away from them that also got double murdered, husband and wife. And nobody talks about those. So, it's a lot of homicides going on in Los Angeles in the Hollywood Hills, okay? It's hundreds of murders. And yeah, it's over 100 years, but the thing is that it's probably underreported. It's probably much larger than we know, because I'm not going to trust the newspaper to tell me what's going on. I got chemtrails going on right now outside my house. My neighbors are walking a dog. They're friggin' planes right over her head, not even looking. And she works at a hospital, which is another reason that you should never go to a hospital. This bird brain is a registered nurse at our hospital, and she's part of a military Medicare program, which is, if you didn't know, Medicare was militarized, 100 years ago, okay? It has always been a militarized program perfected in the Philippines, after the World War II. So it's a 70, 80-year program that has been based to tell doctors how to get paid. And you pay doctors to do unnecessary procedures which have nothing to do with making you well. And that is a military program. And that will make you dumber than dumb. Dumber than a box of hammers. Because if you can't see a military plane being flown out of Travis Air Force Base, at noon, you are a pathetic person, and I don't want you anywhere near me in a hospital. Thank you. Have a good day.